one or two things that you do to show up every day?
Yeah, I think that, so if you ask anybody that is in my space or vicinity, I'm a very I try to be as very, very disciplined and very structured in how I everything from impact my day to how I try to coordinate meetings and all of those different types of things, right? Which may not be, for depending on where you are, like the norm, particularly in like organizing spaces, right? And it's hard to do if like in entrepreneurship as well, because things come at you, randomly, and you have to, tackle different things, right? And handle different issues. But I think for me, one of the things that I think helps a lot is I like getting up early, and I like being able to have a solid morning routine, right? And so that includes, waking up at the same time every day. That includes having, my morning coffee, because that's crucial for me personally.
Yes.
I like to work out in the morning, so I do a workout in the mornings. I also always meditate as well, and I think that's something I incorporated within the past like two years now. And I think that in of itself is extremely important. And it's, people realize like meditation seems so like, Zen or whatever, but it's really hard and it's really a skill more than anything else.
Your brain goes a lot.
Right. It's not easy. And I'm still not like one of those people that can meditate for like an hour straight. It still takes practice to be able to work at every single day. But one of the things that I think it helps me with is being able to focus myself, focus my mind, focus on and that translates to, when you have a schedule that is moving in a million different directions, as any entrepreneur will, or as any organizer will, it helps you to be able to focus on the task at hand, and not get distracted by other things that might be coming up.
So today we are going to be talking about our community movement builder partnership with Nuts and Berries. And so tell me a little bit about yourself and about your role in community movement builders.
Absolutely. So my name is Kwame. I'm officially the Cooperative Director of Community Movement Builders, and head up our work with our community CMOS, which is our CMOS product. We sell wholesale, both gold Ukema CMOS and purple Ukema CMOS, and also a variety of different flavors of CMOS gel. And the way this project really got started, right? Community Movement Builders is really, we're a grassroots organization, right? We do a lot of organizing in the community, and all of it is about building self-determined communities, right? And so part of what that looks like is, one of our big things about building these self-determined communities is about how do we think of through economics and think about economic models that are more sustainable for for workers, right? And what we landed on is the cooperative model, right? And for those who don't know the way what a cooperative is, our specific version of cooperatives are worker-owned cooperatives, right? So the way that works is people who are people are working within a company, have ownership in the company in which they're working. So they'll get, their regular, wage that they would usually get. But then at the end of the year, for example, we take the profits, and based off of the amount of actual labor that was contributed to the company itself, it gets distributed to the folks that actually contributed to those profits, right? So they get a monetary benefit from being worker owners as well. And we think that's a more sustainable way of being able to distribute out profits for, economic models.
I love it. And I'm a big fan of these types of models, especially things that allow for the profits to stay in the community. One of the things that at Nuts and Berries we're very proud of is that, we live in the community where our stores are, and we hire people from within our community and from our area. And we encourage them to keep their money in the community. And so for me, I love this concept of really being able to not have the money being spent in other places, and the people that are owning, the different, models really being able to keep their keep their, their passion right where they want it, and that money to stay in there as well. And of course, I'm a giant fan of grassroots. Tell me kind of how community, well, first, how the community movement builders got started, because I'm very interested in that, especially the food sustainability side of it. And then also how you decided to make CMOS kind of the product that you were going to use to kind of, generate those revenues.
Absolutely. So community movement builders really got started in 2015. It was actually originally a different name, but in 2015, the president of the organization met with youth, really, right? Youth, young people who wanted to make a difference in their communities, and really had the opportunity to be able to purchase a community house where more extensive, in-depth, grassroots, in community organizing could take place, right? And so some of the youth, some of the young folks lived in the Pittsburgh neighborhood of South Atlanta.
Okay.
And so they were like, look, if we have, at that time, prices for houses were a lot cheaper. And so if we have $50,000 to be able to purchase a house, we want it to be in our own neighborhood, in our community, that we think that a lot of work can be done here, right? And so they selected their neighborhood in Pittsburgh, Atlanta. And that's kind of the basis of where our kind of organizing theory comes from, right? So when we organize with community movement builders, we do it in a organic way, right? So when we first moved into when we first started the organization, we're in the community house in the Pittsburgh neighborhood. We talked to a lot of the different quote unquote like leaders within the community, from business owners to long-term residents to even younger folks too that had lived there in the community for a long time. And just we brainstormed what type of things are needed in the community, right? How can an organization like ours be a benefit to the community? And a lot of people brought up things like housing. A lot of people brought up things like being able to make sure that gentrification, making sure that folks are able to stay within their communities when communities across Atlanta are having more investment opportunities, right? They had concerns about public safety. They had concerns about economic models as well, right? Where our jobs are going to be fulfilling for us, as well as jobs that are going to bring in money that we can have control over. And in the name, all of those things touch on what our central organizing tenets are, which is community ownership and self-determination for our communities, right? And so that's really how community movement builders was born. And then since then, we've been organizing again towards that end of self-determination and community liberation, right? And so, and then specifically the community CMOS aspect of it was brought because, for several reasons. I'll talk about this in relation to food sustainability as well, right? So part of the things that was really particularly unique about the house that we were able to purchase is that it was in the Pittsburgh neighborhood, but it was also right next to a garden, right? Now, when we were there, it was like a city urban garden, right? And when we were there, there were weeds throughout the entire garden that were taller than I am, and I'm like 6'2", right? So it was not ready to be used. But one of our first projects after moving into the space was revitalizing that garden and getting it to a position where it is now, where we can grow food, we can provide, and what we grow we provide out to folks in the community. It also was used for one of our other programs within the organization, which is what we call our liberation programs, where we are able to distribute groceries, cleaning supplies, and hygiene items to people in the Pittsburgh neighborhood, but also across Southeast and Southwest Atlanta who need those resources, right? And so some of the food that we grow in the garden is used to be able to provide some of that produce as well to folks in the community, particularly because Pittsburgh is a food desert, right? There isn't a fresh grocery store in close a grocery store that provides fresh produce in close proximity. So that's where that connection was for the food sustainability piece. And, for food sustainability, we have to be able to, for us to be able to have liberated communities, self-determined communities, we also have to have healthy communities, right? So, so the food sustainability piece is extremely important and central to our organization for that exact reason. Now, as an extension of that, we had an urban gardener that actually lives in the house and also organizes the community and has been and maintains the community garden. That person also had the idea of making sea moss because of all of the incredible health benefits that come with sea moss, right? And so after it took some time to get off the ground and think, how do we where can we source it from sustainably? How can we make sure that it's a product that we can bring in-house to be able to bring it in-house and being able to produce it and then being able to sell it to folks in our community, but also making sure that we can have the varieties that people are interested in while also maintaining the integrity of the health aspect of the product itself, right? And so so all of that is kind of like how it was born. And then, obviously we want to make sure that if we're going to be doing any kind of business, we want to make sure it's going to be to the benefit of our community and not extractive as far as the labor that goes into it, right? So if we're going to do any kind of business, it needs to be like a cooperative type of business where we can hire people that live in the community to, we can train folks on how to be able to, process the sea moss and into gels, to be able to distribute and sell to folks to retailers like Nuts and Berries, right. And be able to while any profits that we're making, we want to be able to reinvest those into the community, into the work that we're doing to be able to build out this self-determination within Pittsburgh.
And that's amazing. And one of the things that I love about your products and so many of the local products that we sell at Nuts and Berries is that I believe that the energy and the love of the person creating the product goes into the product, and then the end user actually gets that. And I think that that's one of the things that makes your CMOS so special, is that the bigger picture of what y'all are doing to really enable your community to grow, to not just survive, but to thrive. And I think that is such an important thing that we all need to be in the greater metro Atlanta area thinking about is how do we help each community, not just the ones that are going to give the most business revenue. How do we help each community to really hold on to the roots of the community, the people and the history, because I think that that's really important. I think we lose a little bit of that every single day. I've lived in Brookhaven for 20 plus years, and I've watched it change from a really different place when I first moved into what it is today, which is quite different. And I feel like, one of the things that I know a lot of the community members don't want to lose is the history of it. And I think that what you're doing is really preserving the history of that community, of your community. And I love that. And I think that, again, that goes into the product and makes such a big impact on the end. And even though the end user doesn't always appreciate that, I think that it is something. It's not really something you can measure, but it is a real thing. So thank you for sharing that passion, with us through your products. So, as a business, what are some of the biggest obstacles you have had to overcome with your Moss side of it? Because we've watched y'all.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
It's great. Yeah, as a company.
Yeah, I will say, like, for community CMOS, one of our biggest challenges, I'll say, is we have a hard line on, like, we're trying the purpose of this business first and foremost is that cooperative aspect and that health aspect, right? And so we really take seriously the importance of making democratic decision making, right? And making sure that folks that are working on producing the CMOS also have a say in every aspect of it, right? So the design of the labels that we're using, which we're in the process of thinking through how do we create a new design for the packaging, from the types of flavors that we're going to be introducing, right? And the thing is, for us to be able to make sure that we're trying to kind of flip on its head the kind of top-down approach that a lot of companies have for community CMOS, we have to make sure that all these decisions are being made with consensus around everybody that's working within it, within the company. So it's a challenge, right? But at the same time, I think everybody within the that's within the company that's working within it, we're on the same page. We all want the best for our community. We all want the best for this product. We all want the best for the business in general. And so it makes it a lot easier to be able to, come to consensus, think through how we want to do this, and make sure that we're all working in one accord.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about ingredients for a minute. I don't want your secret recipe, but one of the things that nuts and berries that we are working to kind of communicate to our community is that we don't really support GMOs, and so we are one of the few organizations in the Metro Atlanta that doesn't sell any products with GMOs in them, and so everybody sort of has their ingredient standards, and so kind of talk to me about your ingredient standards, because I know that not all CMOS is created equal. And sort of, what are your ingredient standards, and why is this important to you and to your community?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I think it goes back to the purpose of why we're doing this, right? It's, we are doing this for the benefit of our communities, right? And so we won't do anything. We don't put anything into our products that we think can be that can hurt health-wise anybody that's going to be consuming our products, right? And so that's why we are non-GMO. That's why we are how we source our products is everything's going to be ethically sourced, right? That's why we don't do, the CMOS that we get is not going to be, farm raised, right? It's all wild crafted, which is a big deal because it's I feel like it's easy for a lot of companies to be able to kind of try to skate a little bit and try to try to cut a little bit of a cost to be able to make a little extra dollar, but that's not the purpose of what we're doing. And before we go that route, we would just not have the company, right?
Right.
So I think it's really about sticking to our values and making sure that we are doing this for the purposes that we're doing it for. And again, like I said, the wildcrafted piece is probably one of our central things that we really stand on, and will never compromise, because that's something that's integral to making CMOS be the healthy the healthy product that it is for our bodies, and it can be questioned if it's not wildcrafted the way it is.
Absolutely. So switching kind of directions a little bit, I'm curious about your inspiration and sort of, what is the biggest inspiration that you've had, and sort of who are your mentors on your kind of journey into this space that you're in?
Yeah. That's an interesting question, because I feel like there's a lot of different people who kind of inspire me every day to continue down this course, right? I think our organization, Community Movement Builders, is very much so grounded in the work of organizing and liberation for our communities, right? And this community CMOS is very much so it's very integral to that aspect of it. And so when I think about how do we draw my inspiration, a lot of it is from organizations like SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, where if people study the work that they did historically, it really emphasizes how like for example, Freedom Summers that they had is like being able to go and really integrate within community to learn what the struggles of community are and be able to tackle what those struggles are at a very core of their issue, right? At the very grassroots of the issue. It requires conversations with people and requires how do we really come up with solutions together, not as in like a authoritative, like we demand or we think this is going to be best for you, but a way of like, how is it that you want to see your communities and how do we elevate from there? I think that's something that, really, and, it seems like I'm talking about just like organizing work, but to me, it's very integrated with how we think about community CMOS. Like, for example, we, all the people that work for community CMOS are, are from and are from the Pittsburgh community, right? And so when we're thinking about how do we build up this, business, and how do we think through what it looks like to scale, and what does it look like for us to be able to make decisions about the product itself? Again, it needs to be reflective of our community because that's our base of where we're coming from, right? Yeah. And that's not to say that eventually, we might not expand to other locations for even our organizing work, but ultimately it has to be coming down to whatever communities that we're in and we're touching. All of our aspects of our work is going to be touching that.
Yeah.
And so I think it really blends into every aspect of how we organize and how we think through what we're doing when we're the purposes of what we're doing when we're building cooperative businesses and how we practice them.
And so do you have a one of the things that I think as small business organizers and owners that a lot of people don't quite understand is that we have certain routines we have to keep up, certain things we have to do in order to show up successfully every day. So I'm curious if you have one or two things that you do every day, or if you have like a mantra or a quote that like you think about that you maybe meditate on every single day, because I do, and I think a lot of successful people do. So I'm curious if you have anything that you could share that might inspire sort of, the people that are going to be listening to this. And honestly, my hope is that we can inspire the next generation of, merchants and small business owners to, people that maybe are kind of thinking, I don't know if I can do this. I'm not sure if, this is right for me, that, these interviews that I'm doing can hopefully show people the many, many options. But so what are one or two things that you do to show up every day?
Yeah, I think that, so if you ask anybody that is in my space or vicinity, I'm a very, I try to be as very, very disciplined and very structured in how I, everything from impact my day to how I try to coordinate meetings and all those different types of things, right? Which may not be, for depending on where you are, like the norm, particularly in like organizing spaces, right? And it's hard to do with like in entrepreneurship as well, because things come at you, randomly, and you have to, tackle different things, right? And handle different issues. But I think for me, one of the things that I think helps a lot is I like getting up early, and I like being able to have a solid morning routine, right? And so that includes, waking up at the same time every day. That includes having, my morning coffee, because that's crucial for me personally.
Yes.
I like to work out in the morning. So I do a workout in the mornings. I also always meditate as well. And I think that's something I incorporated within the past like two years now. And I think that in of itself is extremely important. And people realize like meditation seems so like, Zen or whatever, but it's really hard and it's really a skill more than anything else.
Your brain goes a lot.
Right. It's not easy. And I'm still not like one of those people that can meditate for like an hour straight. It still takes practice to be able to work at every single day. But one of the things that I think it helps me with is being able to focus myself, focus my mind, focus on and that translates to when you have a schedule that is moving in a million different directions, as any entrepreneur will, or as any organizer will, it helps you to be able to focus on the task at hand, and not get distracted by other things that might be coming up. And I think that's one of the things that I really, helps me out a lot. You asked about a mantra. I have one of my favorite, or my favorite Bible verse is Proverbs 13:4. The soul of a lazy man desires and has nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made rich. And I kind of, that's one of the things that I try to live by, in the sense that, it's important to be able to, and I know that quote can kind of get interpreted in a lot of different ways. And one is that I think that self-care and self preservation is extremely important. So I'm not necessarily I don't agree necessarily with hustle culture, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs I have at points in my life kind of get tied into. But I do still, while not ascribing to that, still agree that while we have to have time for us to rest, it also is important for us to be able to be diligent and continue to work towards what our goals are at a maintainable pace, to make sure that we can achieve what we want to be able to achieve. And so that's one of the things that I think is, for me, helped me out for a long time.
That's amazing. That's really awesome. So what advice do you have for an aspiring entrepreneur? So if we were to take some, one of the kids in the Pittsburgh community that, your brightest kid, like, what do you say to that kid?
I say, it's a good question. There's a lot of things to say. But I would say one is that it's important to be able to have a plan and stick to your plan. I think that's really important on the onset. I think to be able to move strategically is extremely important, and to be able to still have space to be able to reassess your strategy and see if when you need to change. But ultimately, if you have a specific goal, it's important to be able to move deliberately towards that goal. The second thing I'll say is, and this is coming from, I guess, my organizing aspect, but individual success and your own personal success is never going to be as fulfilling as you think it's going to be. And we only, individually, we only, kind of rise, we only get better as much as the collective improves and gets better. And so I think that's one of our core tenets within, just the ideology around cooperatives, right? Is that, we work better when we can work together.
I love that. I love that. And as we move into Black History Month, and as an ally, I want to know how I can show up for you more, how I can show up for the community more. I have a very unique background. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. So I actually grew up outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So every time somebody says Pittsburgh, I think, I grew up in a neighborhood where, my best friend came from a home, but my best friend was Black, and her mom worked and her dad had some problems with alcohol. And, I watched the kind of dynamics there. I was the only person in the entire neighborhood who had two parents. So everybody else had either one parent or no parents. My neighbor was raised by his aunts. So I kind of had this very unique, diverse upbringing in sort of like a weird pocket. It wasn't like Atlanta. It was totally different. And so but I had the wonderful ability. My best friend's mom's name was Pearl, and she was the most graceful person that I have ever met, or probably ever will. And she's passed now, but she was my inspiration as a working woman. She never complained. She never said a negative word about anybody. She was a very devout Christian. She loved her family more than anything, and she raised four amazing children, and my best friend has three amazing boys now that are out in the world. And but as our world is a little bit scary now, and as growing up, I never imagined that we would be in the position we're in. Like, I never imagined. It crushes me to think that how do we not make any progress in, 40 years? Like, how is that possible? And so, as an ally, I want to do everything in my power. And I have this platform, in Nuts and Berries, where I have this huge community, and these people, quite frankly, have, a lot of really, huge blessings that, and they want to give, but they don't know how. And so, one of the things that I ask to you is, anytime you need an additional voice, an ally in the community, ask, tell me, and I try to do as much as I can. And one of the reasons I'm launching this new podcast series during Black History Month is because I believe that in the natural products industry, we do not have enough representation from the Black community, and not because the Black community isn't doing what they should be, but because the overall community isn't making space as often as they need to. And so that's one of the things that I do at Nuts and Berries is try to, I look at the community and I say, okay, how do we integrate this? How do I make sure that I'm representing all of the people so that, they can have a space and have a voice? And honestly, as we move into the new kind of world on the natural product side, there's a new set of things that are I think a danger to all communities, and they are this new wave of synthetic biology, these ingredients that they're putting in these plant-based foods. And so, like, I want to look, when I see that you guys are talking about food sustainability and sustainability in your communities and food deserts. I know that produce is a challenge for stores, right? Like, I just closed my big grocery store in Decatur because we couldn't make enough money, right? And in spite of the fact that we did have a lot of people that loved us. And so I know what a challenge that is for the grocers and the independent grocers of the world. So I use this as an opportunity to say, how do we better work together to utilize some of the resources I have and some of the needs that your community has, that, maybe can't be met as quick, or maybe could be met quicker if we, utilize an alliance of some kind.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate that question. I also really appreciate, Nuts and Berries is working with us as partners. And also really just appreciate this interview as well and being able to publicize it the way that you are. I think that the way I look at it is, you kind of said it, right? There's not a lack of ideas, a lack of motivation, or a lack of ability within our communities to be able to formulate business, have ideas, be able to put products out there, create products, even when, while community CMOS is our core cooperative, we're always on the lookout to be able to talk to other folks that are doing their own, businesses that they have, and have other ideas that folks have had. And there's a lot of people just in the Pittsburgh neighborhood, which is a very small geography. There are several people who are starting up their own businesses to be able to try to, create their own products, right? And this is not all, in the natural foods area specifically, but I know somebody who's starting up their own, aftercare program. I know somebody that has their own, food, food products that they're selling out, or kind of like a food truck, but currently it's out of their house, right? There's a lot of different things that people are doing, that people just need to have access to resources to be able to get their ideas from point A to point B. And I think that and also being able to have the information and the knowledge to be able, how do we actually start this and how do we actually build this, I think is another big aspect as well. And having resources to be able to do so is a big issue. One thing I know that is, going on in the Pittsburgh neighborhood specifically is, on Saturdays, we have our neighborhood markets. That's at Pittsburgh Yards, where there's a marketplace where not everybody's from the Pittsburgh neighborhood, but largely a lot of people who are in the Pittsburgh neighborhood that have businesses are at this Pittsburgh market. And I believe it's the first Saturday of every month. I think they changed it for this 2023. So I have to actually double check the frequency of the market again, for this year, because I've been actually traveling a little bit, so I'm just now getting back and situated. But yeah, so I think one opportunity to be able to help build with more folks in community that have business ideas, that have businesses that are actually trying to grow, is also just coming out to some of these pop-up markets, right? This is a lot of people's only access to being able to, at least at the stage of their building their business, being able to, introduce their products to the general public. And that's where a lot of people get started in being able to build up from their product into a brand that can be sustainable and be able to scale a little bit larger.
Yeah.
That'd be one of my thoughts. I don't know if you've ever heard of those markets or if you've been before, but
No, I haven't heard about the Pittsburgh one, but I definitely will check that out because that's that's important. And we kind of so Nuts and Berries has been around for 43 years. And when I purchased the company in 2015, right when y'all started, really, we wanted to kind of rebrand it as the market after the market. We have these farmers markets and these local markets all over town that, are one day a week because that's all that they can be. And we wanted to be able to be that place where the community has a platform, a market, for the products that they sell afterwards. And so I love that you kind of highlighted some of the resources that are needed in some of the things, because one of the things that I hope to be able to do in community with the other small local businesses that we're working with is put together kind of a list of all the needs of these kind of startup companies and develop a whether it's a monthly meeting or a regular Zoom or something like that where we can pool these resources, because of course some of the other people that I've talked to already have said they think that access to capital is important, and somebody else is I need a co-packing, and so all of the different parts, and hopefully through my relationships with y'all, we can kind of pool these resources to be able to elevate the Atlanta market. And one of the things that I hope is that I can help y'all get into other stores. There's a lot of independent natural retailers in the country that look to support their local communities, but also people with passion. And I think that's where that's where I hope that we can all eventually get to, that we can continue this network. And we may never have the aspiration to be in Whole Foods and some of those things, because that maybe isn't something that will allow you to stay on purpose and to stay on mission. And I think that's important, that if there's an opportunity to support you, that I can do that, and that we can do that as a community. So ultimately that's my hope.
Look, that sounds fantastic. And yeah, I think that y'all's mission and what y'all do and y'all's position within the market is extremely important, extremely needed. And so we're grateful to be able to be partners with you all as we're both building.
Yeah. Well, do you have any other questions for me?
I don't think so. I think I'm good on my end. I thought this was great. I really appreciate the time being able to, share the space together today.
Absolutely. And so we'll be kind of cutting this up and doing little pieces of it. We're going to be kind of incorporating this into our February promotions. We're going to be doing some sampling of sea moss, and then we'll get kind of customer feedback and customer reaction to some of the different flavors. And we'll add that kind of to our social media. So we'll make sure to tag you and copy you and everything. So if you guys want to promote that as well, we can kind of bring as many people in as possible during the month. So
absolutely.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for your time. And I hope to talk to you again soon, and look forward to working with you in the coming days.
All right. You as well. Have a good one.
Take care.